The letter was only a few lines long. No army marched with it, no city burned because of it, no king died the day it was written, and yet, within a few years, thousands of people would be dead because of what it said, or rather, because of what people believed it said. In the ancient kingdom of Aranthia, power rested on a fragile agreement. The king ruled from the capital. The great noble families ruled everything else. Neither side trusted the other, but both understood a simple truth. If the balance broke, the kingdom would tear itself apart. For almost a century that balance held. Then a letter appeared. It arrived in the city of Valeris, carried by a merchant who claimed he had purchased it from a caravan coming from the east. The seal appeared authentic, the handwriting looked genuine, the message was brief. It was supposedly written by Prince Cassian, the king's eldest son, and according to the letter, he was planning a purge. The document claimed that once he inherited the throne, he intended to strip the noble families of their lands, execute several prominent lords, and replace them with loyal governors appointed directly by the crown. If the letter was real, it meant civil war was inevitable. If it was fake, it was one of the most dangerous lies ever created. No one knew which was true. That uncertainty was enough. The nobles reacted first. Private meetings became secret alliances. Alliances became military preparations. Men who had spent years competing with one another suddenly discovered they shared a common enemy, the prince. Cassian denied everything. He insisted the letter was a forgery. He swore before priests and magistrates that he had never written it. He invited investigators to examine every document in the royal archives. But ancient governments had a problem that modern people often forget. There was no forensic science, no handwriting analysis, no laboratory, no reliable way to determine whether a document was genuine. A letter that looked authentic often became authentic, especially when powerful people wanted it to be. As rumors spread, copies appeared throughout the kingdom. Some versions contained details the original did not. Others included additional threats, supposedly written by the prince. Every new copy made the situation worse. Soon, people were no longer debating whether the prince had written the letter. They were debating what should be done about it. The king attempted to calm the crisis. That only made things worse, because every action he took could be interpreted as proof of guilt. When he ordered investigations, critics claimed he was buying time. When he defended his son, critics claimed he was protecting a conspiracy. When he remained silent, critics claimed silence was an admission. The kingdom entered a state historians would later describe as political panic. Everyone was reacting. Nobody knew what was true. Then came the assassination. Lord Marcellus, one of the most influential nobles in Aranthia, was found dead outside his estate. His throat had been cut. No witnesses were found. Within hours, rumors linked the murder to the letter. Within days, people were treating the connection as fact. The evidence was non-existent. The timing was perfect. Marcellus had been one of the strongest opponents of Prince Cassian. His death appeared to confirm every fear contained within the document. The alliance against the crown expanded overnight. Regional governors began raising troops. Fortified towns closed their gates. Merchants stopped traveling major roads. The kingdom was drifting toward war, and somewhere behind the chaos, the forger remained invisible, because the true genius of the scheme was not the letter itself, it was understanding how people would react to it. The document never needed to be proven. It only needed to be believed. Years later, surviving records would suggest the forgery originated with a minor court official named Lucan Varro. By all accounts, he was an unremarkable administrator with no military power, no noble title, and no public influence. What he did possess was access. He handled correspondence. He copied documents. He studied seals. He understood how official messages were written. Most importantly, he understood the ambitions and fears of the people around him. Varro knew many nobles already suspected the crown of seeking greater control. He knew the prince had a reputation for arrogance. He knew trust inside the kingdom was weaker than anyone realized. The forged letter did not create those problems, it weaponized them. By the time fighting finally began, the original document hardly mattered anymore. Entire regions declared for one side or the other. Cities were besieged. Harvests were destroyed. Families split apart. men who had never seen the letter died defending opinions about it. The first battles were small, the later ones were catastrophic. What had begun as a political dispute became a civil war, and civil wars have a unique brutality. Foreign wars divide nations, civil wars divide neighbors. The kingdom that emerged after 6 years of conflict barely resembled the one that had existed before. The treasury was exhausted, entire noble houses disappeared, trade collapsed. The king died before the war ended. Prince Cassian eventually took the throne, but victory brought little satisfaction. He inherited a kingdom that had already been broken. Ironically, historians generally agree on one thing. The prince probably never intended to carry out any of the plans described in the letter. The war had been fought over a threat that likely never existed. Only decades later did investigators uncover evidence pointing toward Varro, records of payments, witness statements, fragments of correspondence, nothing dramatic, just enough to reconstruct the truth. The man responsible for the war had never commanded an army. He had never led a rebellion. He had never fought on a battlefield. He had written a letter. Or more accurately, he had written someone else's letter. That distinction changed everything. When people imagine the causes of history's great conflicts, they imagine ambitious kings, invading armies, and dramatic speeches. But history is often more fragile than that. Kingdoms are built on trust. Governments are built on trust. Laws, alliances, and institutions all depend on people believing that the information they receive is real. Once that trust collapses, everything built on top of it becomes vulnerable. The forged letter succeeded because it arrived at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place, among exactly the right people. It told them what they already feared, and fear is often more powerful than evidence. In the end, the deadliest weapon in Aranthian history was not a sword, a spear, or an army. It was a piece of parchment, a few lines of ink, and a lie that people found easier to believe than the truth.